Well, I'm really excited to be here today. This is the very first podcast that we're doing for Creative Pursuits, and it's especially meaningful for me having you, Michael Fowlkes, here, because you were one of the guys that really inspired me and kind of showed me that it's possible to create a career and a life out of just an idea.
Out of your passion.
Yeah, and I think that I this whole thing kind of started, and to do this whole thing as a podcast or whatever is kind of, I'm sure you get this a lot, but I get hit up a lot by people that are like, hey, I'm in my day job, I'm not inspired, I'm a creative person, I've got all these things I want to do, but like, how do you even get started on it, And there's so art in creating, like art, there's so many different mediums and there's so many different ways to get there. And there's so many different ways of kind of going down that path. And I don't necessarily have all the answers and nobody does. But I think my thoughts were on this is that if bring in guys like you and other people and we just basically just talk about it. I want to hear your story and all that kind of stuff and how it worked for you. And I think that people will be able to, I think the listeners will be able to kind of take that and sort of see what sort of works for them and maybe take some of these little things as sort
little
of a
pieces,
playbook.
right.
Yeah, because it's felt like, growing up, it felt like, everybody's tripping over themselves to tell you not to be the first one to tell you
what you can't do.
Not to do
right.
Whatever you do, don't do art for a living. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've heard
Perfect
that.
example. My dad, when I was a kid in high school, I said, Dad, I want to be a filmmaker. And he got really pissed. We're having breakfast. He gets up, he goes and gets the Wall Street Journal, and he throws it in my face. And he goes, look up the ads for artists. There are none. There are no jobs as an artist. Get your shit together and do something besides want to be a filmmaker.
Yeah, and it's like
that was my dad.
Yeah, well, like I said,
everybody,
family members, everybody's. There's most people. You hear it so many times, and so I think it's really cool. Again, like to see, like for our background. I remember I was a lifeguard. I'd come back from living in the Amazon,
jungle,
and I was real hungry at the time after living down there, and I remember you were firing on inside sport fishing.
All cylinders.
And it was all cylinders. And I remember you I was a good free diver, and you needed some underwater footage and stuff, so you gave me this opportunity to come along on a shoot and see how it went. But I just remember seeing this, and at the time I thought, like, God, there's maybe 10 jobs I could pick from, and I was, like I said, I was a lifeguard and kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do, but seeing the life that you had the vintage, the boat, and we're going out. I think we went to San Clemente Island.
Yep, we went to the island. Yep.
And you had it all figured out, and it was just this amazing, life that you'd created off of an idea. And just to give everybody a background on this, you were one of the pioneers on sport fishing shows. And I think you basically invented that concept and made it, or one of the first guys.
Well, the first guys were Billy Dance and Roland Martin and some of those guys.
But you were one of the
one of the first guys in the saltwater, one of the first guys in Southern California to try to do. And they did it back in the 50s. There was a guy named out of Pier Point Landing that did fishing flashes, and that was a big hit show in the 50s.
Wow.
So and that kind of went away, and we didn't have anything for years other than Western Outdoor News, and that was all print. So it was I grew up. I had film education. I mean, I went to school and studied filmmaking, and I just one day I was driving home from L.A. and I had a little Porsche, and I'm wheel high, I'm axle high to a diesel truck, stuck in the freeway. And I'm looking around, I'm thinking, this is my life. I keep thinking about being on the water. I keep thinking about, making films and stuff. But my reality is I'm stuck on the freeway, breathing diesel fumes, axle high to a truck for the next 2 hours. Yeah. And I said, I can't do that anymore. So I just decided to, start following my dreams. And it was a huge challenge.
Well, I think that I would love to hear, and I think that for the community out there, because I think it's really important for all of us, because there are people that are supporting they're supporting their families and they're doing stuff off of their creativity passions, and they figured out how to do it. And I think that kind of putting together, building out this community and kind of showing, talking to people and all that kind of stuff. And I think for people that are looking into this, I think it's a really neat opportunity.
I do too.
And I think what I'd like to talk to you about, obviously, because when I stepped into it, Inside Sport Fishing was
a big deal.
It was awesome. It was great. And I got to see it when, we got to travel all over the world, and we got to go to Fiji and Panama and film all these giant marlin and do all this stuff. But that's once it had kind of been developed, like, I want to kind of see that, like, I want to hear about, like, how you started, like, what are the steps, like, how you kind of turn this thing from just an idea and a passion into a business. And I think that's kind of the part that, like...
That's going way back.
I know.
It's going
I know,
way back into the archives.
Yeah, but I think that's the part that's like, you see the end result and go, oh, wow, but it seems like so impossibly unattainable. Or it's like, what's the steps to get there? So I guess just... I want to hear your story, and I think it's a fascinating story anyhow.
Well, thanks. Before we get into my story, I want to hear, you said earlier that I was an inspiration to you as you were on a day job, you had your lifeguarding, and you were looking at some options, and you had all this creativity inside you and just weren't sure what to do with it. So how did you make that transition from saying, all right, I got my time card, I've got a guaranteed income, I got benefits. What made you decide, I'm going to try this?
Well, that's a great question. It's a lot of kind of serendipity and a lot of things that sort of, I never had a plan. So I didn't go into it going, oh, I'm going to do this, and then in 2 years I'm going to do that, and I'm going to whatever. I just I wanted to make art because I've always done it. I've always had a passion for it, and I wanted to make stuff that I thought would be really cool to see.
That was important to you.
Yeah, it
as
told my
a
story.
waterman.
Yeah. And so I think that all art, whatever your medium is, it tells a story.
Absolutely.
And I think it tells your story and kind of what it's kind of a window into
your soul.
Yeah. It's a unique opportunity to kind of have a visual representation into the window into somebody's mind, into how they sort of see the world and how they interpret things. And obviously I've always had a passion for nature, and I grew up around the trades, so all the wood working and metal working and stone work, all that kind of stuff was always something that was sort of in my, growing up, I grew up doing it. So I've always done art. And I was a full-time lifeguard at that time, and it was great. I love lifeguarding. I still love it. The mission of it is incredible.
Yep.
But I wanted to make, it's nice to have something tangible after your day's work, kind of, and so I just made stuff. And then I got into the Festival of the Arts here in Laguna Beach, which is
huge,
this incredible show. And I was living in Laguna Beach, so it was close, and made it. So I did that. I was all excited. I was like, oh man, this is gonna be great. Like, see how it is. I had no idea on the business stuff. Totally, no clue, right? So I put in there, I kind of forgot to put price tags on the stuff. So I was like, I guess that's kind of an important part, right? So I forgot to put price tags on it, so people are asking, and then I'm like, oh, shit.
I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, it's like, oh. Well. But so anyhow, so I did it. I got the price tags on it, pretty quickly. I got somebody go, hey, you got to put price tags on this stuff. But anyhow, so
It's hard to price your art. I mean, how do you take something that you've created out of passion?
Yeah.
Like your butterflies or any piece of work, and then say, okay, well, it's worth this much. Yeah. How do you assess a dollar value to it?
What's the playbook, right? There's
no handbook.
And so I asked this a friend of mine, Dion Wright, who was a metal sculptor.
Right.
He did bitchin' cool stuff, and I figured, like, he was in his 60s or 70s at the time. He'd been doing it for decades, right? Okay. And I go, how do you price your work? Like, how do you know what it's worth? And he kind of paused for a second, and he looked at me and he goes, it's worth whatever somebody's willing to pay for it.
Exactly. So that doesn't help you at all.
No, I mean, it kind of like, okay, well, so anyhow, long story short, I did it. I put price tags on, I thought was fairly reasonable. Like, I did the whole thing. It was well received, whatever, in the festival. And at the end of the summer, I didn't sell a single thing.
Your first
show.
Yeah,
which is kind of it's like you kind of go, oh, well, maybe
nothing sold.
Well, nothing sold. And so I'm like, maybe it's not that good. Maybe, whatever. You kind of start.
Well, you start doubting.
You do.
It's a huge trough.
Art is you got to be pretty stable to do this stuff. I can see why people lose their mind and cut their ears off and do good stuff, because it is a roller coaster.
It is an extension of your being.
Yeah, it's not, because I'd done the stuff. I knew that I felt that it was good. It told the stories that I wanted to tell. Mm-hmm. It was, I thought the pieces were compelling. Like, it was kind of.
You were proud.
I was proud of the work that I did.
Right.
And so I was juried back into the show the next year, and so I'm like, well, I'll do it again, see how it goes, right? The next year, I'm in there, and I sold everything, and it's like, and then like they commissioned stuff and whatever. So the sales thing of it is such like the business market end of this stuff is so unpredictable, and I think you just got to make work that you're proud of and that you're good, and there's billions of people out there.
And let the market tell you what it's worth.
You've got to create the market, and you've got to figure out how to navigate that. And I think that's where like if I would have, again, you kind of get your feelings hurt when goes,
devastating.
Whatever, it's hard.
I was going to say after your first summer, no sales, how did you stay on your feet? What inspired you to keep going? To me, it would be like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I worked my ass off to get all these pieces together. I priced them fair, and nobody bought a single thing.
I think you got to be pretty stubborn in this stuff, and you got to be pretty thick-skinned, because people come by and they go, I don't like, or that's stupid, or whatever.
Right.
You got to be thick-skinned in this, to do this for a business.
To do it for a living,
to do art for fun, and which I think everybody should do
as a craft.
Everybody should do it, or as a hobby, or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
hobby craft.
It's very different. Doing stuff because you want to do it or whatever versus doing it for a business. If you're doing it,
two different worlds.
Doing it for a business, it's a business, and so you got to kind of treat it like a business, or else the business part of it is going to fail.
Yeah,
I feel like
it's like show business. Show's the little word, business is the big word. And I've never paid attention to the business. It's always been about the product. It's always been about the show. For me, it's like I just want to create.
Yeah.
And then deal with the other stuff later. And it's not the wisest way to go about doing things. Like you were just saying, you've got to address the business issues in order for you to be able to keep doing what it is that you want to do.
I feel like you got to have both.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like with the film work that you've done, the product is awesome.
Thanks.
And it tells a great story, and it tells your story, and that. You could have the best business model, you could have all the best marketing, all this stuff. If the product's not good, it's not going to.
Product sucks. It sucks.
Yeah, it's just it's a hard sell. But conversely, you could have the best product in the world
and not be able to sell it,
and not do anything
because you have no business end of it.
Yeah,
right. No marketing skills.
Yeah, and it's again,
it's a learning curve.
Yes, and there's highs and lows in this thing. It's a roller coaster ride, but I think that was kind of, for me starting out. It was kind of like. It was it wasn't just hitting home runs the whole time.
Oh, no.
And it's still, you never arrive, but you just get better at doing the stuff that you do. Yeah. So that was kind of where, for me. So
you just gutted it out after that first summer.
And I had a day job too, so it's not like my,
You could feed the family.
I could, feed, we're okay, and I was working and doing all that. And then it just sort of, I guess for me, it just sort of grew organically, and as this thing kind of worked, I got my lesson in business, like on the job while I'm doing it.
Right.
And there's
School of hard knocks.
A lot of failures, and those are kind of, instead of paying for college for a lot of this stuff, I'm paying, for my failures and learning. You're paying one way or the other, I guess, but I got to learn I learned by doing.
Well, it's the best way to be successful. For
me, it worked. I'm pretty stubborn. And
if you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, obviously you've got to go to school. You got to get your education, because then you're going to come away with the credentials that allow you to get a job doing what it is that you were trained to do.
Yeah.
Nobody can train you to be an artist. Nobody can.
Yeah, I think.
You can go to art school all day long.
You can refine it.
Right. And you get some mentors that help you. With all your metal work and the way you've been able to create all the colors. You've learned as you go, but it's trial and error.
Yeah. And it definitely is. So I remember I kind of I was making art, and I was doing that stuff, and then, like I said, then I stepped into your world and got to film and travel the world and do all these things.
This is pretty cool.
This is pretty amazing. And and you kind of said, like, hey, I just had this idea, and I did it, and I figured out ways to do it, and figured out creative ways to get the funding and get this, and to kind of make it all happen, and you did it. And I think it's just knowing that there's people out there that did it. I think there's a lot of I think, to me, that alone was very inspiring. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
But so you went and you were doing the stuff. Obviously, you've been fishing and around the ocean.
I grew up fishing since I was 5. Yeah. So fishing has always been in my DNA. I've loved it my whole life.
And you were running boats, I think.
I actually was working at 9 years old. I was working as a deckhand on the half-day boat Westerner out of Davies Locker. So I was riding my bicycle after school over to the docks, and I was cleaning the skiffs after school, and then on weekends they'd let me come out and fish, and I'd take the fish home and I'd fillet them and clean them and sell them for 25 cents a fillet around the neighborhood, and that's what I did on the weekends. And then then I started working on the boats. Ended up getting my license. And so ran a charter boat for years. That was when I was in that little car sitting in that freeway, I said, I'm done with this. And I said, I'm buying a boat, I'm selling out, and I'm going to go do what I want to do. So I bought a charter boat, and how was that? Oh my God.
That's a hard
it's a whole world out there trying to make a living on the ocean. I mean, the guys have done it, and I dip my hat to them, because they really, being able to earn a living off the ocean is not easy, especially if you're non-commercial, if you're doing it for sport. So that went on for years, and I think the first 2 years I had the boat, I spent 7 nights and 7 months in my own bed. Wow. The rest of the time was on the boat. I was on the boat 24/7. Yeah, 24/7 for a full year round. 2 years, we were the highest grossing six-pack boat in San Diego, and at the end of 2 years, I was $28,000 in debt.
Congratulations.
Yeah, there's that business end of it. I thought we were doing great. In the end of the season, I got $28,000 worth of fuel bills and bait bills and stuff that I hadn't, that was, on an account during the summer. And I thought we were making money, and it was like, no. So after that, I realized I better get back to doing something I know how to do that could possibly make some money. And I got back into filming.
Yeah. And awesome.
Yeah.
So when you were first starting out, did you make do a proof of, you're obviously doing a lot of filming and doing some stuff and editing it up, and did you teach yourself how to do that editing? Did you go to school for that?
Pretty much. After backing up even further, in high school I had no clue what I wanted to do. Had no clue. In the first couple of years out of high school, I pounded nails as a carpenter at 5 a.m, for a year and a half, and then I worked down here at Pete's Nursery doing horticulture. Plants and stuff, and it was the best day job in the world. You punch a time clock, and all you have is on a pair of shorts and flip-flops, and you're having your lunch on the beach, and the girls are coming through, and you're tan, and you're working, and you're planting trees, and it was just the best day job you could ever ask for. Great family.
Yeah.
And but after a couple of years of that, I realized I better figure out something to do, because I don't want to punch a time clock for the rest of my life. And I went back to school at Orange Coast. I went to school at Orange Coast College, and went through the catalog, and I had no clue. I just went, oh, that sounds neat, and I'd circle it, and oh, that sounds neat, and that sounds neat. So I ended up circling all these classes that sounded fun, and then, I had like 50 classes and kept narrowing them down, and ended up with like 20 units on my first semester in high school, college.
Yeah.
And the last class I took was on a Friday afternoon, and it was on 8mm filmmaking. And I walked into the studio, and my legs literally collapsed out from underneath me. And I sat in the chair, and I just stared at that screen, and I said, all I want to do is put images on that screen. And it was after 5 years of not having a clue, it just dawned on me, that's what I want to do. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know what I was going to put up there. I didn't know anything about any of it. I just knew I wanted to put pictures on that screen. Wow. And that was my first week in college. And I was ready to quit every one of my other classes. And I said, no, stay with it, dude. You got horticulture, you got business, you got all this. I said, get through your semester, take your classes, and then see what happens. So I finished that first semester, and after that, all I was a film rat. Wow. I lived, breathed, and ate in the studio there at Orange Coast College. And Brian Lewis was a really young, great professor. He was in that surf genre, the endless summer, type filmmaking mode. And so he was like, listen, here's the camera, go out and shoot it, come back and we'll tell you what you did wrong. So his approach to teaching was hands-on. So you were saying like learning through your trade by hard knocks. Yeah. It was like, here's the camera, here's how you focus it, here's how you set the aperture, here's how you do a light meter, and go shoot it. Let's see what you got. It's all garbage. So, but you just learn by doing. And that was the good thing at Orange Coast College, was that they allowed the students full access to all the gear and camera equipment that you needed to get your project started. And I ended up working as a lab aide there for a couple of years, and then really, really loved it. And then stumbled on to an opportunity to be a grip on a feature film. And so I was the first guy on set at 5 a.m. I was the last one to go home at midnight after I cleaned everything up.
Those guys work hard.
I didn't get paid a dime. I was an intern.
Yeah.
And just, my birthday, I spent my 21st birthday on set at 5 a.m. in the dark, bringing in coffee. And I was the last one to go home at midnight, cleaning up the set. So you have to pay your dues. But just for me, the fact of being on a studio, being on a set, being on location, watching them film and make movies, it was like, oh my God, I couldn't get enough of it. So I knew I was on the right track. That's just what I wanted to do. But like you said, how do you convert your passion, and how do you extend what's inside your soul, inside your heart, into a way that you can make money with? That was the hard part. I mean, filming, shooting, that's easy, but how do you convert that to dollars and cents? You can't take that down at Bank of America. They won't accept it for a deposit. They want this stuff.
Yeah.
So the hard part for me, the hardest part for me was the transitioning from, finding something I wanted to do, having a passion about it, learning the skill, and then how do you convert that skill to dollars and cents?
So did you do kind of like a proof of concept, like do like a show, like build out the show? Like, did you make like a sample?
No, it was
show,
basically I won the student film festival. I won best in the a student film, so I won best in festival. I was all excited about it. I'm thinking, I'm just strutting my stuff, and it was like, okay, good luck, dude. Get a day job. Yeah. So it was, I can't even remember. I think the first opportunities I had were, just maybe shooting, B camera on some commercials, just cameraman, just any job I could get that would pay. I think it was $100 a day. Yeah. For 12, 14-hour days. And and putting in a lot of hours. And then, you just kept communicating, like you said, you sort of network with other people that have the same passion, other students. Some of those students had friends, and they'd get an opportunity to go do something, and it just you just take advantage of every opportunity you have. Or I did. Mm-hmm. Anything that presented itself film-wise, I'd take it. And those jobs started to come in and started to grow a little bit. And somebody said, "Hey, I want to do a commercial, and how much is it going to cost?" And I said, "Well, you can spend $300 or $3 million." It's a 30-second spot. If you're Coca-Cola, you spend $3 million, you put it on the Super Bowl. If you're Joe Schmo, you spend $300 and hope it goes on cable. So there's no way to price the value of the art. Yeah. So you find a client that needs something, that want to promote whatever they're doing, or accounting or services or legal service, and you try to do a good 30-second commercial for them.
You just say yes and do whatever you do.
Just say yes and figure out what to do afterward. Yeah. Get the job, and then
yes
figure out how to
figure.
Yeah, exactly. Backfill it.
Wow. So when you came up with the concept to do Inside Sport Fishing, you had the boat that you'd been doing the charter work, or you'd been doing the charter work.
Yep.
And you'd been doing the film stuff.
Did film stuff prior to getting the boat. I was just, banking around in the industry, on the outskirts. And, I looked into being an actor. I looked into being a director. I looked into being an editor. All these different aspects of filmmaking. I was interested in anything. I just wanted to be a part of it.
You ended up being all of them.
Well, yeah, I ended up wearing all the hats.
You ended up being all of them.
Which is...
So when you came up with the idea for Inside Sport Fishing, though?
I've been working the boat. I've been working the boat, chartering the boat for years. And like I said, we were the highest grossing six-pack in San Diego for 2 years, and I was $28,000 in debt. Uh-huh. So I said, all right, I got to get back. And that's when I went back to school, and that's when I started getting some opportunities to do commercials. And then there was a guy that put out a show here, and it was horrible. It was a fishing show, and it was horrible. Yeah. And I looked at it, and I said, this is horrible. I can do better than that. And so I started making some phone calls, and talked to Frank Lopresti down at Fisherman's Landing, and I said, hey, let's do a long-range film. And I don't know, kid. I said, what do you want? I said, well, just let me get on the boat, and I'll film it. I don't know. How expensive those trips are. And I said, I know, but I'll make a film for it. Finally, they let me on. And it turned out to be a really good film. So we did The Ultimate Challenge with Howard Folsom. He was an older gentleman that had come into my film class. Actually, I skipped a section there. Between going to college and then starting to produce, Brian invited me back because I'd been a lab rat. He invited me back as a teacher's assistant. So I started as a teacher's assistant. And after, a semester or two as an assistant, I applied for a license, teaching credentials as I forget what they call it, vocational certificate. So you have enough years and the experience that they want to hire you because you're an expert in the business. So they brought me in as an expert, and I was like, 22 years old? I'm teaching these 18-year-old kids.
Awesome, yeah.
Yeah. But the kids would always say, how do you get a job? how do you get a job in this business? And I typed up this beautiful resume. I mean, she had her information, her contact information, her references. Everything was perfect, her picture. I said, no, this is a perfect resume. Pass it out, and the kids were all going, ooh, this is great. And then I reached my pocket, and I took out a pair of black crotchless panties, and I said, which girl got the job? And it was like their faces just went white. And I said, yeah, it's the entertainment business. You know, nobody cares. You just have to perform.
You have to be entertaining. It has to be
performing. So I probably would get arrested today if I did that in school. But back in the day, it was effective.
Yeah.
And so from there, I spent a couple of years teaching, part-time at nights and had great classes, and everybody loved it, and it was fun, but it was taking up too much energy. So I said I really need to focus on trying to create something. And that's when I started the Inside Sport Fishing series. I said, you know what, I love to fish and I love to film, so why don't we combine the two things that I love doing the most, fishing and filming. And decided I wanted to do a film. So I called Toyo Shimano, who was the president of Shimano at that time, young guy. He was the grandson of the Shimano family from Japan, and they'd set up Shimano Fishing USA.
And you'd never met him before?
Never met him before.
No
contact, nothing. It's just they had just come on the scene. Shimano grew up, evolved as a gear manufacturer for automobiles and components, and then they went into bicycling and motorcycles, and that's where they had their juice was the manufacturing of motorcycle, automobile, bicycle parts, and they got into fishing. And so they sent Toyo over here to U.S. to manage the U.S. facility. So I called him. I said, hey, I wrote him a letter. I'll never forget. I said, Mr. Shimano, I'm doing this, blah, 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 and I'd like to do a series on sport fishing in Southern California, and I'd like to have Shimano get involved. I never forget, he wrote back on the bottom of the letter in green pen, he goes, involvement has the word green attached to it. What do you have in mind? So all he said was, again, back to the business. It was like, I have this concept. He goes, okay, I like it. How much? So he said, come on in and meet. So we went over there. I met with him in Irvine, and he handed me a rod. He said, we got these new rods. Come on out here in the parking lot and let's cast it. He wanted to see if I knew how to fish. Yeah. So we're casting, and I'm hitting the targets. And he goes, okay, let's go inside and talk. And he said, what do you have in mind? I said, well, I just want to do a Southern California sport fishing show. And he goes, all right, how much? And I said, I don't know, what do you think? He goes, oh, you tell me. And so we just kind of went around. We ended up on a number that was, enough to get the show started. Yeah. And I was thrilled. I was absolutely. So you were able to start the show with one sponsor from Shimano, and it was minimal. We were doing, between the time I started teaching and finished teaching, I was doing big commercial productions up in L.A. for Showtime, the movie channel. We were doing Gallagher specials. He was the guy that did Sledge-O-Matic. We had huge budgets. We were putting, we were selling out auditoriums. Yeah. So we were, big live shows, live to tape, and 6, 7 cameras and huge 150-man crews, and it was a big deal. And they have, in a production, they have what they call a craft services table. And during, from the time you get on the set until you leave, there's this craft services table that has coffee and drinks and donuts and coffee and snacks and gum and, it's just stuff that people can snack on, water, Coke, sodas. That budget for that table was greater than my entire budget to produce a half-hour show. Yeah. So we went from having a substantial amount of money to work with to production from that to this. And so I had to really completely revamp how I was looking at going into production work. And that's kind of where you and I got involved, was that, I really couldn't afford to have a crew. We started off with I'd hire, a couple of guys and cameramen and audio, and every guy you brought into the crew would take another hour in the morning to get things rolling. It just wasn't efficient. And you can't script out what you're going to do on a fishing trip. You're going to get on a boat.
You got to adapt and move.
You got to adapt the whole time. So you really can't script out. I did originally. I had all these stories, and I went, I can't do this. So the scripts went out the door the first day. And because you always had a pretty lean crew on that stuff. Always.
And it's by design, because again, first you're on boats. Not all these boats are huge.
Right.
You're
small craft.
Small craft. And then also, you've got to adapt and be able to tell that story of what's going on and what really happened.
Instantaneously. Yeah. You have to be able to adapt while it's happening, because you can't script, we're going to have this fish jump right here by the boat, and then you just have to be ready. And what I found was that if I had the camera, then I knew that I was getting what it was that I wanted to. I knew enough about fishing to anticipate what I thought was going to happen and what would make for good visuals. So you can't tell someone to shoot it. You can't say, oh, by the way, get that shot, because it's over. So by manning up and getting behind the camera myself, And those are big cameras back in the day. There were big Betacam SPs. They weighed like 40 pounds a piece, and we're out in the water, and you're rocking and rolling, and you're going through here, and it's like, okay, I'm going to puke.
Yeah, it's a tough thing.
It's a tough
gig.
I
remember a funny story along those lines is that time we went to Panama.
Oh, absolutely.
And fished on all those
on
islands
the skiffs.
and off the Hannibal Bank.
Yep.
And we were fishing. There was a
mothership.
Yeah, there was a mothership,
Intrepid.
but then there's it was the
skiffs,
Intrepid, which
right.
was an incredible,
beautiful,
incredible
118
experience.
foot, beautiful.
Yeah, but then there's the skiffs that they had, and one of the skiffs had hooked into a big blue marlin.
Yep.
And so, but the gal that had caught the marlin, she was like exhausted catching it, and we needed to get some footage of that, because again, I mean, it's like you got to get. If you don't have the footage, it doesn't tell that story.
Don't tell me, show me.
Yeah. And so I remember because I had my big 4 foot long free diving fins and all the underwater camera, and my mask on my head and all this stuff. And she was kind of gassed out, and everybody there was gassed out. So I got in, and I kept my fins on because I knew once that fish comes up, you got about a little short window to hop back in. So I'm reeling on this 400-pound marlin, like reeling it in with my big giant long fins on and my mask on my face and all that stuff, and then get it up to the boat, hand it to the lady, hop in the water, go get kind of bitch slapped by the tail of that fish, because we want the thing I learned on the underwater stuff is if you're not right up there on it, even a 400-pound marlin looks like a mackerel.
3 inches to 3 feet is the money shot. Anything past 3 feet, you lose impact, and you were right up in. You were like battling his fin.
Kind of slapped, tail slapped me in the face and all that stuff. But just just keeping it dynamic like that, and everybody wearing different hats and doing all this stuff allowed you to be able to kind of move and groove and tell a real, authentic story, which I think is such a cool thing about your show. And what it was real, and it told a real story, and you never knew what was going to happen. The audience never knew what was going to happen because
I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah, so I thought that was a cool thing, and it kept it also where, like, getting started, you're not having such a mountain of
responsibilities,
and overhead and hurdles. And it made the barriers to entry less, right? I mean,
correct.
Tell me.
Correct. Absolutely. It was you have to keep your cost overhead. I did a phenomenal interview on this film that we just finished on the history of sport fishing with Ray Scott. Now, Ray Scott was the guy that started BASS back in 1966, I believe. And he was a fisherman. He was an insurance salesman. And he'd gone out fishing for a friend of his all day, and they got blown off the water. It was horrible conditions. They went in, he took a shower, and he was watching the NCAA playoffs. And he goes, why isn't there a show like this for bass? Why isn't there a show for fishing? Why is there tournaments for fishing? And this guy just came up with an idea in his bathroom, or in his bathrobe in a hotel room watching the NCAA. So he went about starting BASS, which is now the largest, one of the most successful fishing companies, industries, sections of the industry in the world. I mean, they're huge. And so here's a guy by himself in his bathrobe in a hotel room watching TV thinking, why isn't there a show like that for fishing? And so that story is amazing. And then Bill Dance, he interviewed Bill Dance, and he went to the networks and said, hey, I want to do a local fishing show. And they go, a what? And he goes, a local fishing show. What's that? Well, a fishing show about local fishing here in Tennessee. Nah, we're not interested. And all the networks said no. And then finally one of them said, yeah, it sounds like an idea. We need to do a pilot, and you need to find some sponsors. He goes, I don't even fly. I don't have a license. And he goes, no, you need to do a TV pilot. So, I mean, you hear about these guys that today are legends that really changed an industry and enriched an industry that started off as just two guys that had a couple of ideas and then stayed with it. So I think what you were saying is that have your ideas, believe. Throughout this whole ordeal for me, this last 5 years has been tough because we'll go into that later. But it's like it's been like being on the ocean in a violent storm, and it's like as you go up that swell and you get to see at the peak, you go, "Oh my God, this feels great." But then when you drop down into that trough, it's like, "Oh my God, I'm going to die." You can't breathe. You're like being caught under a big well. On a big wave. You're thinking, "My God, which way is up?"
Yeah.
So those highs and lows are extreme and they're painful.
Yeah.
And you've been through it, and I think everybody that's ever been successful or followed their passion has found that, because it's not just a job, it's your life. It's your heart, soul, mind, creativity, inspiration, and you're putting that out for the world to see. And if they slap you down, it's like, fuck, I got nothing,
It's rough.
It's
rough.
tough.
You got to be pretty thick-skinned. And you got to really believe in what you're doing and believe in yourself.
One night my mom came to me when I was dreaming, and she just said, Michael, keep believing and stay focused. So those two, that keep believing and stay focused. So it's like, all right, I believe in what I'm doing. Just stay focused and you have to put in the hours. You have to put in the work. Nobody hands it to you.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, nobody hands it to you. There are no free lunches. You've got to create, you've got to earn every single blood, sweat, and tear that you put in there to get to a place where you can say, yeah, I'm really proud of what I'm doing. And the world seems to respond to it in a way that's going to allow me to keep doing it because they're willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
So with your art, as long as somebody's willing to pay, it doesn't matter how much they're paying, but it gives you the opportunity to keep creating.
And make more stuff to get those stories out there.
Exactly.
Right? So yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's the goal is to get those stories out there. And I mean, and again, you did a great job of doing that. So at this point, we're in looking back, you've got your concept, you've got a sponsor,
right?
You know how to film. You've got a backer. You've put in
some hours,
a lot of work. Getting
educating,
proficient at editing and doing all the stuff you need to do. And then as it sort of grows, so how did you scale that business? Because that's another one that's really important. Is
absolutely.
Once you start getting a little bit of momentum, how did you seize that momentum to be able to scale that business and turn it into what I stepped into?
It started with Shimano as a single and sole sponsor. And they gave me enough money to actually start shooting some episodes. And like you said, we were a skeleton crew. It was basically me, myself, and I. Maybe my wife would grab that, a boom and do some audio work or something. And, eventually we got to you and got some underwater footage going. Bill Wilson, another artist down here in town, started shooting with us some underwater. He was a good scuba diver. And I said, get rid of that spear gun and grab a camera. Let's go to work. And he goes, what? I go, get rid of the spear gun. Let's film it instead of kill it. And he goes, okay. And so we basically just, people that love being on the water would sort of gravitate, and we'd end up working together. And how it evolved primarily was that, I was able to get the first shows in the can, get those edited, was able to make a deal with, at the time it was Prime Video, which is now Fox Sports.
Yep.
Not Amazon Prime, but back in the day it was Fox Sports Cable.
Did you already have connections or know those guys at all?
I had no connections. No.
How did you get in contact?
Just
with
phone.
them?
I just I looked up Fox. They didn't have internet back then, so it was like 911 or what is it 411. You have a number for Fox Studios in LA? Yeah. And then it's
did you kind of call your way up the food chain in a sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Begged, borrowed, and stole my way up the food chain. And finally got to a program director that was a young guy, and he said, yeah, I like to fish. What do you have in mind? I said, well, I'm doing these local Southern California fishing shows that are all about Southern California. He goes, yeah, well, we're all about Southern California. I'll tell you what, we'll split the airtime with you. We'll give you the 30 minutes of airtime, and then we'll take half the inventory and we'll sell it, and then you have the other half of the inventory that you can sell, so you get paid that way. So they gave me the airtime on a straight 50-50 barter, which meant that means basically there's 8, I forget how many, 12, 14 commercials, I think, in a half-hour show. So they got to keep 7 commercials, and I got to keep 7 30-second spots.
Is that where the money was at on this? Is the commercials?
Yeah, yes,
okay.
and the sponsorship.
And the sponsorship.
Yeah, so I sold it as a package where Shimano is brought to you by Shimano, and then they'd get their 30-second commercials. And so then I was able to go out and say, hey, Turner's Outdoorsman. And Turner said, yeah, we'll buy a spot or, a title sponsorship and a spot. We'll do that. So I was able to sell the title of Sizzle, brought to you by Turner's Outdoorsman, blah, 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 brought to you by Shimano. And then a 30-second spot. And that was enough to break even at first. And then, as we got more popular and the show started to get some numbers to it, the buzz started at, people other than, hey, can we get on your show? Absolutely, So fortunately, about 3 or 4 years into it, I think we were at the trade show. And again, putting in the time, doing the trade shows, setting up a booth, shaking hands, really being out in the industry, in your marketplace, regardless of what it is. It doesn't matter what your marketplace is. Be there. Show up.
Yeah, if nobody knows that you're out there,
it's like we talked about identifying Casey Parlett as an artist, as opposed to, inside sport fishing. Nobody knows what that is, and I didn't identify with it as myself. So I think it's really important to establish yourself as the artist.
That's what you were saying is maybe one of the things looking back that I
didn't capitalize
2020 on some of the stuff. I mean, your voice is probably one of the most iconic voices people recognize it.
Yeah, thanks. People would come up to me and go, "Oh, I know who you are. I heard your voice."
But you were behind the camera filming all the time.
Yeah,
so
because I wanted to make sure to get the shot.
Yeah, it's a challenge on that.
And it was never about me. It was always about the sport.
Yeah,
it was always about the sport of fishing. And I looked at some of these other shows, and it was all about the talent. The talent was all like, oh, look at what I can. And these guys that we're filming with, they'd forgotten more about catching salmon than I'll ever know.
Yeah.
Or, the San Diego guys about how to catch big tuna or wahoo. I mean, they've forgotten more about catching fish than I'll ever know. So utilizing them, the captains and the guides, as our guest host, and just staying out of the way, it worked really well. But in hindsight, I did not promote myself as an individual. And I think that's, in the long run, I missed an opportunity.
Okay.
I was never about being in front of the camera, but I did miss an opportunity, which I think would have really helped establish my brand.
It kind of helps to, once there's momentum, and once it seems like once there's momentum, everybody kind of wants to jump on board.
Everybody
right?
wants a piece of you.
But when it's a nothing kind of thing, I mean,
you can't buy.
And there's a lot of these catch-22 kind of things. I guess I'll give you an example in my world.
Right.
Was, I've been doing sculpture. I'd been doing sculpture for, I don't know, 10
since
years
high school,
so.
right?
Well, I mean, forever, since I was a kid, right? But I've been, after my initial failure at the Festival of the Arts, and then my redemptive tour, brought in enough money to kind of keep this whole
thing. I love that story.
This whole thing going a little bit, but getting in and doing, I was doing residential works and residential pieces, and then, but I doing big public pieces is really cool, and it's a great opportunity. It gets it out there. The world gets to see it. It's an awesome thing. But a lot of these public art applications, it's like, what public art pieces have you done? And if you don't, it's like, but you want to get into it and do it, but like on the applications, most of the time, it's like, what have you done?
Right. They don't want to be first.
I haven't done. Nobody wants to be the first, and nobody wants. It's very hard to take that first step on this stuff.
To convince someone that it's worth their money to hire you to do a piece of art for them without the reputation preceding it.
Without having done it. And
right.
So it's really takes kind of a leap of faith. And for me, again, one of the things, and I would say one of the things that really leveled up the business end of what I do and kind of got my work out there to a wider audience and stuff is, I hadn't really done any public art pieces for that reason, because of that catch-22 kind of thing, because you'd apply and you go, well, I haven't done it, but here's some residential stuff I've done, and they're like, oh, thanks, but no thanks, or oh, you get declined on that application or whatever. This couple here in town, Derek and Natalia Austinson, they'd seen my work and they liked it, and they wanted to sponsor a public art piece. And they said, hey, they went to the city of Laguna, and they said, hey, we really like this. We have this. There's a site here above Divers Cove, and they go, we really like the art that Casey Parlett does, and we're going to do it. And they basically said, hey, we're just going to pay him directly, and we're gonna donate the art piece
to the city.
And the city's like, oh, we're fine with that. We'll take that, right?
Yeah, right.
As they do. So that really them kind of taking that leap of faith with me and kind of sponsoring that
but
piece.
They'd seen your work. They'd seen your residential
work. They'd seen
so
the
they
stuff
knew
I've
you
done.
could do.
They'd seen it in the fest. Like I'd been doing it.
Right.
Like it's not like I was a complete unknown, but like that octopus piece right above Divers Cove.
I'd
never done a large, giant bronze octopus
piece of work.
It was cool. It's a cool piece.
It still is. It's awesome.
It is a cool piece.
It'll be there for generations.
Well, that's the cool thing about doing art. It's there. You do it. It's around for forever.
Right.
But them taking that leap on that, and again, I was pretty sure that I could do an octopus out of bronze. It was all forged and welded, but I hadn't done it. So, it's a two-way street on this stuff you've got to have the artist that can actually make the stuff, but then you have to have the community and the people in the community, or these different people that are willing to believe in it
or
enough
corporations,
to,
right.
yes, to believe in it enough to kind of sponsor it. It takes both of those things to
Absolutely.
make good art.
Absolutely.
To get it out there. And I'll tell you, having that octopus has led to a lot of stuff and a lot of resident. I mean, a lot of people see it, and so just those public pieces alone has really brought in a lot of work and really helped to kind of level up the business to make it where it was something that, at a certain point, like you mentioned, I mean, I was lifeguarding. I was a full-time lifeguard with all the pension and the medical and all this stuff. And then this art thing sort of slowly grew into something that kind of snowballed into something that was, went from being this thing I do a couple hours a week or whatever, and eventually it became a 40-hour-a-week commitment that I do on my days off, and I do on my nights and whatever, and weekends and holidays and whatever. And then it got to a point where it kind of it required my full-time attention, and then I kind of took that leap of faith and went out into the big scary world and did it, and it was a leap of faith. But I'd also had a 10-year tract history to do it. And again, like, part of what I think is so important about having these conversations, talking to you and other people like that, is it was really hard to find people to talk to that, like, where I could go, oh, that works for me, or this is how we do that. Yeah, and you kind of pick people's brains a little bit, but it was, most of that leap of faith I did was based off of this 10-year runway of working, 80 hours a week or whatever, doing whatever. And I kind of knew what I'd done. I go, okay, well, if I can just do this, then I'll be okay. And then I can do that. And then then jumping into it and being able to put your full-time attention into it, thankfully it's gone up from there. But
there's no ceiling.
But I think that, like, all these little opportunities in these things are really, and being able to, like, take advantage of it and to go to kind of do your best to over deliver on these things.
Absolutely.
With whatever the budget
under
is.
Under promise and over deliver.
Yeah, and I think
that
that's
builds
kinda,
your reputation.
And it sounds like that's really a lot of what you did, because once the momentum's going, I mean, it sounds like for your business, I mean, once the momentum's going, everybody wants to get on board and get those commercial slots.
Right.
Get in, and you'd go up to Alaska and go to these different lodges and stuff like that, and then the lodge they'd pay you to go to these things.
Right. They would call us and say, we'd like to invite you to come up and film with us.
Yeah,
so
or
they wouldn't pay us, but they would comp the trips.
They comp the trips.
So, and we're talking $3,500, $5,000 per person trips. Some of them even more.
Well, we went to Namotu to film some fishing out in Namotu, which is mostly known as a surf spot. That would be an expense. That was a fantastic experience, fantastic trip, and to be able to go out there and experience that was, I mean, it's an amazing thing as it is, and then for you to take that and kind of
and the responsibility of making sure that you produce something for them that's going to be effective and help them sell and market their resort. So even though we're on vacation, it was anything but a vacation. We were going to a remote location to do some really hard work.
We were putting in long days, having a great time putting in long days, but it was long days.
If you can't do it with a smile, you shouldn't be doing it.
No, you have to enjoy the process.
Yeah, you got to enjoy the process. And sometimes it's hard because you're up against the wall financially, but you have to enjoy the process. Without the enjoyment, you shouldn't be doing it. When you made your decision to want to quit your day job, quit being a lifeguard with all the benefits and all the perks and all the steady income, and decide you wanted to go and do your artwork full time, what did Gina say? What happened? What did your wife say when you discussed that? How did that come up? What happened?
Yeah, it was we had a young kid. Brooks was just a little guy then. He was maybe 3 years older.
He was a baby.
He was a little guy.
Newlywed,
too.
First child.
Yeah. It was a lot of stuff all at once. Going and doing this and jumping into it, you going from the known and the stable and all that to this unknown and unstable and all this stuff. It was a leap of faith in a lot of ways, and thankfully, Gina had faith in me and my ability to do that, and she's an eternal optimist too. Thank God, because I'm kind of realists, I guess some could say, maybe a little you kind of doubt things and whatever.
There's some hard knocks.
There's some hard knocks, and I know they're coming. Gina is an eternal optimist on stuff, and she anticipates the best case of everything happening, and sometimes
That's
she's right.
So cool.
Thank God, yeah. So anyhow, yeah, and really one of the big pushes, because I'd been working, it was 80 hours a week, right?
Yeah.
And I've been doing that for almost 10 years. And, that's a lot of people, they do that for their entire careers, right? I mean, they're working, a lot of lawyers you talk to, they're working 80 hours a week, every week, forever. But for me, when Brooks came along, and he was just a little guy, and for the first year or two of his life, like, man, I barely even saw him. So I'd leave in the morning, and he's asleep. And then I'd come back at night after, working my
Day job.
lifeguard, and then I'd work at the shop to get stuff done in my night job, and I'd come back at night and he's asleep. And so that's not the kind of dad that I wanted to be, and I really, he's just a little guy and whatever, but if you have a kid, part of this whole thing is legacy, and it's, I've learned a lot from a lot of different people, relatives, friends, whatever. You learn that it's kind of, now it's your responsibility to pass that along,
your child,
right? And to do that. And so, I didn't see a way that could really happen with me, working 80 hours a week forever, right? And so, and Gina wasn't working at the time because she just had Brooks and she was at home with him. And so, yeah, it was a leap of faith. We went and basically, stopped working, lifeguards, and that was all, had a big quitter party, and it was a big fun send-off and whatever. And then it's like, okay, now here's this new reality of doing art full time as the thing,
source of income.
Yeah. And so fortunately, I'd had that 10-year track record to go from, but it's also, there's also that belief, and thankfully that belief that Gina had
exactly
in me and in what I make and what we do and all that stuff. And so she was fully on board. She was like, hey, she in fact was she really was one of the people, like she was like, hey, because she, she knew, like, she
saw how hard you were working.
Well, yeah. And she also knew that, like, it's important to Brooks and it's important to me, and I love now
how much time you get to spend with them.
I'm still working a lot, right? You're still working. You don't stop working. I'm working all the time, but I'm in control of it, and I'm able to bring him in, and he's working in the shop now. And Koa, my youngest,
right.
He's coming in. He wants to come in and work in this, work and make stuff. And so Brooks,
chills.
It's so cool. And so, again, still working all the time, doing all that stuff, but with the flexibility that this has, and for me to be able to be present as a dad, and to be able to be able to kind of be that mentor and kind of show him and introduce him to all those things, like all that water stuff and all the ocean stuff, and get him out, put a mask on him and get out free diving and do some stuff, or take him out rowing and doing stuff. That's what matters, And so at the end of the day, I kind of looking at it, even if everything crashed and burned, nobody buys the economy crashes and then nobody buys art, or people decide they hate wildlife art, or whatever it is, right? It's still worth it because of the time and that time that I was able to spend with the kids. So that is something that for me, you really have to factor that into the value. It's not all just money. It's not all whatever. Having that ability to be able to be present as a father, as a husband, as a dad, whatever, or at least do the best you can, right? But it takes time. And so to be able to see that growth that Brooks has had, where now he's out diving around and we're going out looking for lobsters, or going and whatever it is, right? Rowing around, doing these things, that's priceless. And so to be able to bring that in and to have that ability to be able to kind of blend my work in what I do with my family and all that stuff, and to kind of create this life out of it. I think that's really one of the most important things.
It's the greatest gift in the world.
Yeah, and then see what you've done. Again, like creating a life around what you wanted to do and your business, and it kind of, there's a lot of blurred lines, with it, but I mean, I think there's a lot. It's a beautiful thing, and again, just that time spent with the kids and with Gina doing these things and kind of recharging your batteries on what it makes the artwork better too.
It's the intangibles, and the fact that you had a woman behind you that I couldn't have done it without Kim. Same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, she's been with me through thick and thin, and there's been some really, really thin times when we're in some really skinny water and there's very little water under the keel. She's never left my side, and I don't think I could have done anything I've done without her, to be honest with you. And I think Gina's the same way. Is that
it's huge.
It's just having that support in your life from family, friends, husband, wife, significant others. Aunts, uncles, I think it's so important. Family is so important, and today we've gotten very far away from traditional family values in terms of the internet. And I think having the kids in an organic environment, teaching them about the ocean, teaching them about life,
how to make stuff with their hands,
and to appreciate the tide pools and to appreciate the small things, actually take the time. Make the time to be able to spend with them doing the things that were important to you as a child that have enabled you to become who you are, the man you are today. I think those are invaluable tangents that don't really ever get talked about.
Yeah, no, that stuff's huge, and that's really one of the beautiful things about doing this. And so, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, cool.
And how many years did you do Inside Sport Fishing? How many years?
20.
I mean, it's still going. It's still available.
It's still on Amazon right now. It's running on Amazon Prime, which is cool. But we actually produced for 27 straight years.
I mean, and that kind of leads to what you're working on now, because you had this huge library of top-level fishermen and top-level water. I mean, all these people that were just these legends in that industry. And you had all this historic black and white footage and all this stuff, and you were kind of uniquely positioned in the spot with all this stuff that like really somebody needed to put it all together to do it before, because you had all this old historical footage that's like doesn't last forever.
Original 35 millimeter film footage. I mean, that cellulite dries up. I mean, it dries, and if it dries, it's unusable. Had boxes and boxes of this stuff, and it all, kind of regressing a little bit. I got diagnosed in 2012 with stage 4 cancer, and that was on the Panama trip. Yeah, I was sick on the Panama trip and didn't know why I didn't have any energy. Yeah, and as soon as I got back, they said, "Oh, come here, you're going in for a surgery." So it was multiple surgeries, chemo, radiation, that whole thing. It was a nightmare. Stage 4, they said, there's no guarantees, but hopefully the treatment kills the disease before it kills the patient. We don't know. So stage 4, horrible experience. But during that process, before I actually went in to started doing the first MRI, just getting hooked up. Nobody even mentioned the word cancer. So they're putting all these electrodes in. And the guys hooked me up. He goes, "So when did you find out you had the cancer?" And I went, "What?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything." And he shoves me into the MRI. So you're in this tube, just being told you had cancer. And he says, "Don't move for 30 minutes. And I'm panicked. I can't breathe. I'm just starting to go into like full panic mode because nobody had ever even mentioned the word cancer to me. I had no idea. I was just getting
horrible.
It was a horrible.
Worst possible.
It was a horrible experience. And so what happened though? I was no drugs, nothing. I just said, okay, I've got to close my eyes and get myself together here and meditate. So I just closed my eyes, started meditating, and the most amazing experience of my life. I found myself floating in this pool, like this infinity pool, and it was crystal clear, and it was just so peaceful. And there was this golden ladder coming out from the other side, and my mom and my grandfather and my grandmother all were standing there, as clear as you and I talking right here. And they said, "Michael, you don't have to go through this. You can come with us now." And it was like, whoa. And I looked at him, and it was the most peaceful feeling I'd ever had in my life. It was beyond words. And I looked around the pool, and it wasn't quite full. And I said, "You know what? I just got a little bit more to do here." And they said, "Okay, we're here whenever you're ready." And at that point, I knew that what I'd thought in the back of my mind for years about doing this birth of big game fishing was why I decided to stay around. And so I knew that making this film was why I was here. And it started off as The Endless Summer meets Ken Burns. I thought it was a hot little 60-minute surf-driven fishing show, which would be great music and pipeline. Well, once we got into it, all this history started just pouring out, like the IGFA and Trout Unlimited, Bonefish Tarpon and Trust, the American Sport Fishing Association, all these museums, everybody that heard about what we were doing, say, hey, can we do anything to help? We have archives and we have pictures, you're welcome to it. So they opened their vaults. And what happened is it evolved from a 60-minute film into a 12-part, 12-hour documentary, which covers the entire aspect of fishing.
A masterpiece. It's amazing.
Thank you.
No, it is. It's amazing.
Thanks, but thank you. It really has, and it was all organic, all evolved on its own, and the whole process just kept, every time we'd get to an obstacle, every time we'd get to one of those barriers, something would just happen. It would just kept believing, stay focused, and it would open up the doors. So, and that doesn't really help anybody that's trying to be an entrepreneur or try to follow your dreams, other than just stay focused.
That's grit.
Believe in yourself.
That's grit. There's a lot of grit there.
You have to. You got to grind it out. So, anyway.
Well, I think that really, again, all art all forms. It's telling stories, right? It's telling a story, whether it's a sculpture that tells a story about something, whether it's a film. But I think for you, all these things that you've done for me, it's led you to tell this overarching story about the history of sport fishing.
About the passion of the sport.
Yeah, which is, again, you were uniquely positioned. You were the uniquely qualified. It's all these things kind of coming together. And this is a very important story that you needed to be the person to tell. And I think it's so cool that's how it is. And to know the backstory on that, and to know what went into it, and know your history, and to know you as well as it just really, to me, it shows me like all these steps. And again, we're all storytellers here.
Right.
And it's just taking steps and getting a little bit of more tools in your toolbox, and a little more of this, and a little more tricks and in different, techniques. But ultimately, for that to come together, for Inside Sport Fishing and all the years you did that, and all that to come together into the history of sport fishing, which really does. It really tells the story that you wanted to tell. Well, it kind of almost, it sounds like it almost kind of started telling itself.
Exactly.
Because if you want to start off with a 60-minute thing or whatever, and it
said no, it's not going to be 60 minutes. We're talking 12 hours, and we didn't even scratch the surface.
Wow. It is kind of that the whole concept of the muse, and your words just it sort of flows through you.
That's how art is.
That's how it is, and
music.
Yep, all of it. But this really is it's that story wanted to be told, and it flowed through you.
Yes, and
and you, through all your hard work and figuring out the business stuff and all the other stuff that it takes to kind of keep that afloat, it was able to become a real thing. So
I just got to become the vessel, the vehicle that it got to. It came down from here, funneled through, and now it's out.
Yeah,
and I think with music and your art, anything, it's like it just comes from your soul. And if you're willing to let it out, if you're willing to work hard enough to get your skill set to a point where you know how to play a guitar, or you know how to do a welding, or you know how to do the woodwork, the film work, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Painting, it doesn't matter. As long as you're willing to do the work to get yourself to a position where you're skilled enough, good things will happen. I really, truly believe that good things are destined to happen for good reasons. And if the artist has his soul and his heart and his mind in the right place, good things are going to come you. They're going to come your way, but it doesn't just come out of thin air like you were saying. It's anything but.
With the old saying, luck favors the prepared.
Yeah.
That's where I think it's so cool to hear your journey through all this stuff. And obviously, you see the end result, history of sport fishing and where that is and all that. But to know the process of that, I think it's to me, that's a very interesting part of the story of that, and I think that's a really neat thing. I'm so glad that we could talk about this and have this conversation, because I think it's really cool for people to hear that and to know that. So when they go and they watch History of Sport Fishing and they know, and they're immersed in that, to know what went into making that actually a real tangible thing.
Yep.
Yeah. It just adds so many more layers to it, and I think that's so cool.
Well, you were saying, like your family, the Perlette family has been around in Laguna Beach for forever.
Yeah.
So you had roots. You had roots from the time you were a child on the beach. And I think, looking back in my life, I was 4 years old, and I was given a fishing rod, a plastic fishing rod with a big plastic hook that was about this big around. You know, nothing could eat it. And I'd go down to my neighbor's goldfish pond and spend all day. I was 4 years old, 2 blocks away from my grandparents' house. Oh, he's out there fishing the pond.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I figured out if I put some Velveeta cheese on the hook, they'd actually nibble on the hook to get the cheese off.
Makes it a little more interesting.
Yeah, I could never catch them, but it took me a while to figure out, oh, maybe if I grease this up, they'll bite it. So, you know, I'd been preparing myself basically unknowingly since I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
And that was family, loving, caring, teaching, giving you the opportunity. And I think that's so important as a parent or as parents to be able to give our children the opportunity to follow their dreams, give them the foundation that says, yeah, be creative, you know, allow them to be creative. It's not for everybody. God knows it's not, you know, but for the few, I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Well, I think it's allowed you to live an incredibly interesting, engaging, cool life. And again, it's a roller. There's pluses and minuses. There's highs and lows. There's all that stuff. But I just think it's such an interesting journey, and I do think that like your story is always fascinating to me. And I'm really glad that we could talk about this today. And this has been so fun. I'm so stoked that we were able to do this, and I'm really, really stoked. This is the first episode of this podcast.
I'm honored.
I'm honored.
Honored to be here to be on your first podcast.
Can you let everybody know where to go to find History of Sport Fishing?
Right now, it's the historyofsportfishing.com, and we just signed a deal yesterday with a distribution company, which I'm really thrilled about, Monkey Wrench Films, and they specialize in documentary distribution.
Well, and you want to get that story out there too.
I want the world to see it. And, and
yeah.
JD at Big Games, JD's Big Game Tackle up there, he's been around forever. We were talking yesterday, and he said, Michael, the one thing, he asked me how it was going. I said, it's tough. JD, it's been a really, really tough year because I budgeted to make the film. Mm-hmm. I had enough money to make the film and get us across the finish line by the grace of God. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, we're done. Here you go, Casey, sell it. And they go, no, we're not buying it. What? We don't want it. What do you mean you don't want it? We're not buying documentaries right now. Nobody's buying documentaries. So I was like, what the fuck? Yeah. So I was like, what do we do? Well, internet. Let's see if we can create a brand on the internet. So we, Elliot Andrews, a phenomenal technician, basically took my brand, which didn't exist, and has built it into a pretty substantial awareness, social media-wise. So,
great.
We get millions of views and hundreds of thousands of followers. So people are liking it. Having the distributors signing up, I feel really inspired about the fact that now we've got it in the hands of professional distributers.
I think that's an important aspect.
And it's and their concept is let's get it everywhere we can possibly get it worldwide. We need it in French, we need it in Spanish, we need it in English to start with, and we're gonna promote it. So, and JD said the other day, he said, Michael, it really doesn't matter if you make any money on this thing. This is a legacy piece that you're going to be remembered for the rest of your life. Yeah. And it's true. It's like it never was about the money for me. It's always been about the product. It's always been about the work. It's like your work. Everywhere I look, every single ripple was something.
There's a lot of details that nobody but me is ever going to notice.
But to an observer, if it's right, you don't see the detail. You just are absorbed in the art. Yeah. And that to me is the ultimate compliment. And when people start telling you about their experience or telling you about what it's making them feel, you've done your job.
Yeah. Well, you've definitely done a great job on it. I mean, History of Sport Fishing is amazing. Oh, I've been watching. It's so cool in the way that you've blended some of the historical footage with this
contemporary
modern. I mean, it's just it's beautiful. So I'm really glad to hear that it's going to get out and it's going to get into be available to a wider audience.
I think so. I think it's coming.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely. I mean, like I said, I'm really excited. Anybody that wants to, everybody should go out and see it. It's amazing. Michael's one of the most amazing guys I know. So this has been really fun. I'm so stoked that we did this. Thank you, Michael.
Casey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.